Hello again. In this lecture, we're going to learn about going from a percent to a fraction. The nice thing about percents to fractions is that if you know what percent means, it's going to be very nice to convert between the two. We're going to start off with our first problem where we have 50%. Now, let's break up the word percent into two things. Per is another way of thinking of division. And cent, think like century, means 100. So percent, you can think in your head means divide by 100. So when we see 50%, we can take 50 and divide it by 100. And now we have a fraction. Division and fraction are the same story. You have a numerator divided by a denominator. If you're able to reduce the fraction, you should. And if you're seeing that, yep, 50 out of 100, 50 can go into top and bottom. 50 goes into itself once and into 100 twice, so the fraction representation of 50% is 1/2. And that's kind of nice. Now, they're not always so nice, so let's see one that looks a little bit more scarier. Let's say we have 640%. Now, it's still the same idea. You have 640 per, so per, think of division, and cent, think of it as 100. Now, we have to depend on our skills for simplifying fractions to move on. So definitely the zeros can cancel out, and we have 64 over 100. And now we get, ooh, I said crazy stuff, I'm sorry. It's not 100, it's 10. The zero canceled off, right? So now I'm saying what can go into 64 and also 10? And for sure 2 can go into both of them because they're both even numbers. And 2 into 64 is 32. 2 into 10 is 5. And we can't reduce any further because 5 can't go into 32. And this should make sense. 640% is over 100%. 32/5, 32 is much bigger than 5, so that we have over 100%. Alright, let's go ahead and tackle another one. Let's make this one positively the worst one that we're going to see, where we have 3/4%. Now, I kind of misled you a little bit. Yes, percent means divide by 100, but we can also think of it a little bit differently. We can think of the percentage symbol, meaning not only just divide by 100, but also times 100. Just like when we viewed percents with decimals, except we used the decimal representation of 100. The reason why I bring this up is because when we see 3/4 and we're dividing by 100, it's not very pleasant to see a fraction divided by a whole number. Instead, we would want to view this where we keep the fraction as it is, we change to multiplication, and we multiply by the reciprocal. So if you slow down a little bit, you might have to replay this. Think about where I wrote here. This step is jumping straight to the point, where instead of thinking divide by 100, we're seeing as times by the reciprocal of 100, or times 100. Now, we'll try to reduce if we're able to. Remember, numerators to denominators, and there is no reducing here, so we'll multiply straight across. 3 times 1 is 3, and 4 times 100 is 400. So this is the fraction representation of 3/4%. Let's see another one of those because they're kind of scary. So, I think I was on number 4. Let's hopefully be there. We have 9/2%. And what we're going to do from now on is think of this percent symbol, meaning times 100. It's sometimes in our benefit to just think of it as divide by 100, but the reason why we're going to think of it as times 100 is because we started with fractions, and we want to keep consistent with seeing them all as fractions. Multiplying with fractions is much easier than dividing. Now, if there's any reducing, we should do so. There actually isn't any reducing, so we go straight across. 9 times 1 is 9, and 2 times 100 is 200. And this is the fraction representation of 9/2%. Let's see one more that's not the most pleasant, but also not the worst. we have 0.2%. And if it makes you feel better, I can write the 0 in front of it. So we have 0.2%. There's a couple of different ways you can look at this one. I'm going to go back to the first method we had, where we think of whatever the number in front of the percent symbol. So we have 0.2% per cent. And I'm going to think of it that way, where I view it as divide by 100. I'll show you the other way afterwards. So when we think of it this way, we want to write our answer, because the directions said to, as a fraction, not a decimal. So this decimal up top here doesn't really make any sense. If we want to get rid of it, we'd move it over 1. But if we do anything to the top part of the fraction, we must do exactly the same thing to the bottom part. So we have 2 over 1,000, in which we can now reduce this fraction by 2 on top and bottom. Sorry about my division sign. Just does not write well. And we have 1 over 500. So this is this fraction representation of 0.2%. Now, I didn't show this other method in class, but if you are interested, when we see 0.2%, we can think of 0.2 as 2/10. And let me write that out in words. 2/10. We can think of that as 2 over 10. That's 2/10. That's what it says there. And it's 2/10%, so I still need that percentage symbol. Now I can take this fraction, percent, and change it into a fraction notation. And I can go back to using the previous method, where let me scroll up a little bit so you have that on screen, where I'm going to take percent and translate it to meaning times 100th. And I have 2/10 times 100th. And I can reduce here. 2 can go into itself once and into 10 5 times. Multiply straight across. 1 times 1 is 1. 5 times 100 is 500. And I got the same answer as before. This way isn't always the most efficient, but sometimes it helps visualize people where they can go back to what they're used to seeing instead of having to move over the decimal point like we did up above. So keep both methods in mind, and until next time.